Welcome to the EMC demonstration of the Unified Infrastructure Management solution integration into the Ionix Service Management solution. As you can see in front of you is the EMC End User Request Portal. This is a role-based resource that allows different end users to perform different functions based on the roles assigned to them. If you're an administrator, you may go into the Administration tab, and you may then edit the blueprints that you're allowed offering to your end users. I have an example UIM service offering blueprint available. Note that I can duplicate it and then assign different users different capabilities within the blueprint. But in this example, let's look at some of the things that we can change in this blueprint settings. Note I can give this blueprint a specific name and description to identify it differently from the others. I can also enforce different regular expression naming conventions at different points of the settings. For example, I can enforce a regular expression for the name of the resource. I can enforce a regular expression for the defaults, as well as which service offering and target VBlock I would like to be utilized. And again, on a blueprint by blueprint basis, I can enforce specific rules. End users may only be allowed to pick specific service offerings or target VBlocks, but in our example we'll leave those free form. You also have the ability to control the approval process at every step of the way. In our example here, we're going to require Ionix Service Management solution approval in order to commission a VBlock service. We also can enforce activation, deactivation, decommissioning, movement, changing of leasings, or even detaching. Again, this is all controlled on a per blueprint basis, and you can then control what end users can do based on the roles you've assigned them. Once an end user is in the commission portlet, they're able to have their choice of blueprints to choose from based on the role management roles the administrators assign them. We'll click the commission button, and now we'll pick a simple name. For this specific demonstration, we'll just call it EMC Demo 1. We'll give it a simple description. There we are. And we all now pick this specific service offering. And again, this can be controlled by the role that the end user is a member of, as well as the target VBlock. And we can activate or register the service, but in this example, we'll just pick register. I now need to select the folder the resource will belong to. And again, this folder can be shown or not shown. Many different folders can be created and controlled via the role management. I now also have the choice of commissioning the resource immediately or at a later time frame as chosen here. Or I can also add the lease period as a permanent lease or choose a specific amount of time for which the resource will be leased, again controlled by the administrator. And I now can click the Commission tab. Once the commission request is received, let's now move to the Request portal so that we can see what status the request is. As you can see, we're now in the Request portal, and note that the status of our commission request is set to pending approval. Note that in each step of the way, in real time, the status log is being changed. So note that we have started the creation of the service management request within Ionix, and the action map that's passed, again, is our EMC demo with our description. And note that it did create a request number 173, and we are now pending the approval of our request for the VBlock Acadia 1. So now let's go ahead and move to the service management interface and approve this request. As you can see in our request outstanding screen, request number 173 is in fact created for our VBlock Acadia 1 request. And note that the current status is unspecified, meaning that it has not been completed yet. Note that on our approval process, we may go in and complete this request. Note that when we go into the approval, this is just like any other service level agreement between any other organization, and it is important to note that while this demonstration is showing integration into Ionix SM, any approval request system supported by our adapters is supported. So let's go ahead and approve this request, and then we will move back into the EMC solution to look at the portal request to see our status. Now that we're back in the EMC request portlet, let's go ahead and check the status of our request now that it's been approved. And of course now the status is complete. Note that a complete log of every step of the way has been shown. The provisioning, the staging, operating system installing. This is all done in real time as the commissioning took place. And now that the commissioning has been completed, we can now go to the Resources tab, and we see the resource is now available. Note that we see the status as provisioned. It's important to also note that I can do additional actions against this service offering. For example, I can activate it, deactivate it, decommission, I can move it, change the leasing options based on the administrator preferences, and of course detach it as well. And again, it's important to note that all of these functions are controlled with approval processes by the administrator if they choose to. Now let's go ahead and go back to the Ionix SM interface and check some statuses of additional items. Note that my request status has now been set to completed because the provisioning has been completed. And note also that a configuration item has been created once the provisioning was completed. I'd now like to move into the demonstration of the EMC Orchestrator Design Studio so that we can look at some of the workflow process behind this accelerator. As you can see before you, the EMC Orchestrator Design Studio has a graphical workflow design. It is based on the Eclipse interface. And let's go ahead and take a look at the overview of the workflow. As you can see, we have two trees in our service organization. One that involves the UIM interface, the other that involves the Ionix SM interface. Let's go ahead and drill into one of these services and look at some of the specific steps. Inside the Ionix SM service, which is a sub-workflow of the service organization, we can see the different steps in the creation, updating, adding of logging, closing, and approval of the Ionix SM requests. Note that we have different scenarios across the bottom. For example, we have a create workflow as you can see here. We have a cancel approval workflow as you can see, the specific approval workflow itself. And as you note that each step of the way, different functions are performed or sub-scenarios are actioned upon. Note that error handling is easily added with responses sent to specific outputs. We have approval response and rejected response handling. Note that every step of the way you can easily understand what's going to be happening next by looking at the properties of each icon. If the workflow needs to be altered, you can easily go to the palette and pick different functions that are needed. For example, perhaps you'd like to grab a timer, add some extra scripting, or some extra notifying. For example, perhaps I'd like to add some additional logging or additional error handling. All I'd have to do is pick the specific function and then note the plus signs that are added. Perhaps I would like to see an error handler added in addition to this particular script. I can just add this error handler and then go ahead and add a response manager and then fill in the properties. It is that simple to alter a workflow. And this concludes the demonstration of the EMC Unified Infrastructure Manager integration into the Ionix Service Manager solution.